Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Buddhang dhammang sanghang namasami. So this is part 6 of our investigation of the discourse on developing mindfulness. So for those who are new, you've got some homework. Got to catch up. You step into the more advanced stages. So we've already covered the development of mindfulness with regard to the body and the feelings and states of mind. Now we come to the fourth one, the Dhammas, which is a little bit of a specialized theme because there are 5 different topics which deals with, you can say, mental phenomena in specific sense, but it's also what we call the specific Buddhist concepts with regard to the mind, such as the 5 hindrances and 7 factors of awakening, the 4 noble truths, as well as a few others a bit more technical, 5 groups of grasping and the 6 senses. So this is a little bit more refined, and it's really building upon what we've already learned, since the 5 hindrances are states of mind. And they also have feelings, and they also have physical expressions. So, this is a developmental process, developing mindfulness. So we're now doing the hindrances and slowly going through them. Last week we did the desire for sensual pleasures, and today is ill will as a hindrance. And similarly to sensual desire, it's a major topic, major theme for most people. And basically these hindrances are relating to our fundamental motivating energies. Got that? That's not Buddhist jargon, that's psychobabble. But anyway, because desire is reaching out, ill will is pushing away, and I would say the next 3 are different expressions of delusion, which is just paralysis or standing still, we don't know what to do. These are the 3 primal energies that motivate us in life. So if you understand them, you understand who you are, what you're doing. Some people, they think, they're in control of their life. But if you observe sensual desire, are you controlling your desire, or is desire controlling you? Big shock. The same with aversion or ill will. I think the Buddha toned this down. In some instances, like the 3 defilements, he talks about aversion, dosa. But in this sense, he talks about ill will, payapad, which is a little bit toned down, you see. The same with the first one, is just sensual desire. Whereas more technically, he usually talks about craving for sensual pleasures. When you hear that, you get that's a bit too much for me. I won't handle that one. Craving. But desire, well, just liking. The same with ill will. If you hear it, anger or aversion, my goodness. Most of us recognize we have a big backlog of unprocessed aversion, anger, etc. There's a whole range of different intensities and degrees of it, of course. But it is, at this level of just say ill will, and not liking, pushing away, it probably is at least accessible to some degree. So similarly, almost similarly, but anyway, if you remember last time I mentioned the technical cause of sensual desire is? Anybody? No?
That is smarty.
Anybody remember that? That was only last week. Inappropriate attention to the sign of the beautiful. Or attractive, I would say, attractive. Sign of the attractive, whatever is attractive. And most of us define attractive as pleasant, huh? What gives us pleasant feeling? He's back to the feelings again. If something's not attractive, I don't know about you, but something isn't attractive doesn't make me feel happy. Well, the technical cause of aversion is inappropriate attention to the sign of the ugly, or the word they use literally means repulsive or irritating, because ugliness doesn't exist actually. But what repulses you, what irritates you, it can be just, like now the sun just set. That's irritating. Well, some people. Well, just a minute ago, the sun was shining, and it was pleasant. Huh? I mean, slightly, enough to maybe be noticeable, or at least be tolerable anyway. But now the sun set, and I think, oh, didn't bring my umbrella. Is it going to rain? The stories can develop. But anyway, so I'm feeling irritated. Not aversion yet, just irritation. Or what you perceive as irritating or repugnant, not quite repulsive. That's a bit strong, maybe. But so first of all, then it may be helpful to know what inappropriate attention is. And there's two words there in Pali. It's ayoniso manasikara, and the manasikara is attention. And that's just neutral. We all have attention. It's one of the functionals of the mind. Every act of consciousness needs attention. The Buddha said, phenomena arise from attention. And he's talking subjectively, of course. You could say, if you're, I don't know what they call it, anyway, one of these philosophers, the world's out there, that exists. But to the Buddha, you close your eyes and it doesn't exist. And I don't pay attention. Don't pay attention to it. It doesn't exist for me. So attention is very fundamental. It's very functional in our brains. But then the Buddha adds this other word, yoniso, or ayaniso, means inappropriate. So yoniso literally means sort of back to the source, or back to the origins. So it has basically, Venerable Analayo did a thorough analysis of it in his book on Satipatthana. No, another book actually, anyway. And he found basically three meanings of it. One is very thorough, penetrating, right to the source. The other one is appropriate, how to do it correctly, how to attend correctly. And the third one is, implied in that, is wise reflection, or wise attention. You have some understanding of what's appropriate to attend to, and then you can give your attention to it. So I translate it as appropriate attention. Hopefully try and give a general sense maybe of, all three of them if you like, all three meanings if you like. So technically again, this appropriate attention, not the inappropriate, but appropriate attention, seeing, the Buddha has quite a high idealistic review, a very high definition of it. Appropriate attention is just seeing impermanence, unsatisfactoriness, no self, and you can say, you see the unattractive in the attractive. Not deluded by only looking at the attractive anymore. And sees the evenness of some things. You see beyond attractive or unattractive, as it were. Just seeing things as they are, beyond attractive or unattractive. So if you can do that, if you can see things as neither attractive or unattractive, no greed, no desire, no aversion. Okay? Simple. End of course. Let's got 45 minutes here, though. So how to do that? So and of course, another point is, I think, is that, the Buddha starts off with, in the hindrances, I would say, he starts off with desire, because that's probably the most prominent hindrance. But it's also, in a way, fairly easy, because it has to do with pleasant feeling, right? Who doesn't want to engage with pleasant feeling? Huh? However, we come to ill will, and the cause of that is looking at unpleasantness, or what causes you suffering or pain, who wants to look at that? Huh? It's a very tricky character. Yeah, but the Buddha, fortunately, the Buddha gives us a very helpful, you can say, framework to use, called the Four Noble Truths. Okay, there is dukkha, there is unsatisfactoriness, there is unhappiness, there is pain, there is suffering, if you like. But there is a cause. Don't get stuck on suffering. I mean, unfortunately, some, even Buddhists, especially in the West, who've learned Buddhism from the books, they get a little bit hung up on the suffering part. Yeah, so they just think, oh yeah, life is suffering. But the Buddha taught suffering and the path to the cessation of suffering too. Don't forget that part. Otherwise you just end up as a grumpy old Buddhist. Suffering. And I gave a retreat once in Switzerland, and this was a long one, a whole month. And there was one man who came on it, and he was a long-term meditator. But I don't think he'd done a month retreat before, but anyway, he stayed for the whole month. So it was the first month-long retreat I gave, so I asked the people at the end how it went. And this man he was very quiet, didn't say very much during the whole retreat. Sitting there looking very serious, you know. He's from Germany. And Mary, you might need to edit that out. You're the editor, right?
I'm not sure I can.
Oh.
Yes, I can.
Yeah, okay. I don't know where this goes, you know. But anyway, where was I? Oh yes, he was. So at the end of the retreat, I asked everybody how it was, and he just sat there. So I said, well, how was it for you? He said, do you know what? I actually enjoyed this retreat. Like this was something new, you know. He said, you know, I thought Buddhist meditation was, 10 days of mindful suffering. He said, but I surprised myself when I really enjoyed this retreat. It's like it's a revelation to enjoy meditation, you know. Anyway, the Buddha gives us the Four Noble Truths. There is unsatisfactoriness, there is dukkha, there is a cause of dukkha, it does have a cessation, and there's a path to follow. So hopefully when you keep that in mind, you won't get too frightened by suffering. Because normally it's not a very pleasant thing, you know. Suffering isn't pleasant, is it? Right? We're talking to masochists here. I mean, sense desire, is pleasant based on pleasant feeling. So, we're sort of encouraged to I wouldn't say indulge, engage with it. But ill will, aversion, is based upon unpleasant feeling. Basically, if there's anger, ill will, aversion, whatever, behind it is pain. That aversion is just the reaction to pain. It's like desire is a reaction to pleasant feeling. But we've been conditioned to our life to give inappropriate attention to what is unpleasant, that we have a big backlog of unprocessed anger and aversion. So that's why it's hard to, engage with or pick through, if you like, to unpack, I call it, unpack it. But with the practice of developing mindfulness, concentration, and some other meditation exercises, it's possible to unpack it, unravel it, as it were. It's just part of a whole causal series. Anger isn't really the issue. If you're trying to get rid of your anger, you're missing the point. It's not a matter of anger, it's a matter of what caused it, the pain. So you have to look through the anger to the pain behind it. Where are you hurting? It could be physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually. Yeah, but most of us haven't even bothered to look, so we got a little bit of homework to do here. So the Buddha also there's another little complexity with it, because there's various stages to aversion. The very first stage, I would say, is contraction. You contract. You know, so just like when somebody hits you or something, or you get hurt, you cringe, right? Yeah, you contract, and then it's very unpleasant. That's unpleasant. So then you can get angry at that unpleasantness of the contraction, and then sometimes it just stays locked in your body, in your mind. So you just avoid that situation. That's caused me pain. I'll never go there again. But sometimes when you get either under stress, when you get vulnerable, you get weak or something, and then this contraction just explodes. That's what we call rage. Recognize that too. It doesn't always stay contracted. Sometimes it just blows up. And then we don't know how to handle this energy, so invariably we dump it on people. Dump it on somebody, on something. We go and punch the wall, or we punch somebody, or whatever. We have to put it outside because it's like an uncontrolled energy exploding, you see. So where do you catch it? I mean, the Buddha gave the precepts to give us a containment, you know, that we don't engage in violence or aggression. You know, panatipata, refraining from taking the life of any sentient being. That is more refined. It's ahimsa, harmlessness. So when you can at least rein in that energy, it's a possibility now to follow it back to its source. But sometimes a lot of that energy, that aversion energy, is locked in the body. So it's very hard to see. It's just like a numbness or paralysis. And people don't realize that they're feeling depressed, for example. They're feeling depressed because they're actually angry. So there's a saying in psychobabble, you know, mad is sad. Mad is pain, actually. But all they can do is we try and deal with the madness, being mad or angry, you see. Because that's the most obvious symptom of it. But it's not the real source. So it depends where you catch it, you see. So by having the precepts, we kind of refrain or restrain some of that exploding energy anyway. We can bring it back to the source. What's behind it? Where's the real root of all this? You know, where's the pain behind it? And unfortunately, you know, a little top up of that too is that we have a natural, what's been called a negativity bias. You know, because pain hurts, right? So who wants to experience it again? So you're very defensive to avoid this again in the future. They say that you can, if you've been hurt once, it'll take you 10 times to apologize 10 times before you'll be forgiven. We don't have a positivity bias. And when things are going well, we're happy. We can become actually very Brahmat, careless, because everything's no problem, just drifting along. But pain comes along and we're up there to defend ourselves. I mean, it's a biological mechanism. Otherwise, you wouldn't have survived. You got to be on a defensive. There's many dangerous things out there, you know. The wind's blowing, you're walking around, you watch out for the trees, the limbs falling down. As I walk down here, there's quite a few fallen branches on the road there. I realized I'm wearing a woolen hat, not a plastic hat, or not a metal hat. So I was listening very carefully to branches breaking from my head. And a lot of them, if you notice when they fall, notice how they fall. The heavy end goes right into the ground. Imagine that being your brain. I don't want to frighten you, but I think I'll wear one of those firefighting white hats back up to the hard hats back to my hut. Frightening myself. And there's a few extra little in our modern day context. There's a few other variations of anger that I might just mention. I don't know if I get around to dealing with them, but one of the hardest ones is self-hatred. one of the hardest ones to deal with is self-hatred. Apparently it was at some conference with the Dalai Lama, and the psychologist talked about self-hatred, and Dalai Lama just couldn't understand. It's just not a concept in Tibet. Self-hatred? Why would you hate yourself? I mean, if it's really absurd, isn't it? There's a part of you that hates part of you. Yeah. I hate part of myself. I mean, you got a war going on there, you know? But I think I would say it's primarily developed because of competition in our competitive society. You know, we are very competitive. You got to get ahead. You notice on the news, it's always the winner. They is the hero, the winner. There can be 10 people in a race, and you know, some of them maybe have really progressed from their natural, abilities. They've progressed, but unless they win, they're nothing. You know, the sort of winner. Only the winner sits on the top, you know. But all the others, they've even surpassed, say, the winner in terms of their energy, their devotion, their commitment, all the rest of it. They didn't win, so tough luck. So of course, you're always going to be an object of hate. Huh? I never did it. I couldn't do it. I wasn't successful. So, and the second one is righteous anger. Righteous anger is a bit of another complicated one because it's righteous. It seems to be right, but it's still anger, and anger is never right. Even though the cause is right, maybe, you know, like the people protesting, for example. You know, okay, I mean, they have a right to protest, and it's even, you know, praisable because they're pointing out weaknesses in the system, maybe. But to get angry about it undoes it. You know, it's just creating more toxic energy. They have a very good positive contribution to make, but the anger poisons it. Yeah, but it's hard to differentiate between the anger and the righteousness sometimes. So anyway, the cessation of anger, and this is also the Buddha had a special meditation to help us deal with that. You know, if one develops a meditation on metta bhavana, you know that. It's usually translated as loving kindness, but I think it's a bit too idealistic myself. I prefer to use a direct translation as friendliness. Metta is close to the word for friendliness, mitra. I think in Sanskrit, mitra. So I recognize that, you know, friendliness is more practical for me, and I think it makes it more accessible to people too, and more usable. I mean, loving kindness to me is a little bit too idealistic, and you know, when I was in Thailand, I didn't know about. I basically only knew about Anapanasati, mindfulness of breathing. But then reading some books in Thailand, of course, I think metta is the second most popular meditation. And the third one is Asubha. So I thought, oh, well, maybe I should do this metta meditation, you know, maybe practice it. And I had, fortunately in the monastery, there was a book in the library in English, a big thick one. But it was useful because it was a manual of Buddhist practice, Visuddhimagga, for those who are. I wouldn't recommend it at this stage, but but it gives the instructions for all the 40 meditation themes in Buddhism, Theravada Buddhism. So, but this one, metta, I thought I should practice it. So, and what they say, what I understood in the beginning anyway, was that you bring up this feeling of well-being in yourself, and then you spread it to the 10 directions, you know, front and back and left and right and up and how is that? Yeah, is that 8 or 10 there? Anyway, the cardinal directions anyway. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, okay. So anyway, I tried this. I was sitting there and I tried to bring up well-being, and then I tried to radiate it out. well, to the birds and to the crickets and to the, to the worms in the ground. And by the end I was so dizzy. Too many things. And so it just didn't work. It was just too brainy, you see. So I just gave up after a while. It was just too much.
Isn't that your feeling, not brain?
Yeah, now I understood, yes. I was literally following the directions, you see. But as you read in the scripture on mindfulness, on metta bhavana, it says, ahang sukhita homi, may I be well. So you bring up a feeling and experience of well-being in your own heart. And ideally, I had to figure out this part. You have to wait till that sense of well-being in your own heart is overflowing before you can share it. I just had a little bit of well-being. Oh yeah, you be well. Okay, let's not go after the birds now. and it just got exhausted. It's like a battery being discharged, you see. But then I realized one has to keep it charged up. May I be well, may others be well. May I be well, may others be well. And then, that's helpful in a way, but it still is a little bit heady, I would say, or idealistic. But the way to practice it, I would advise, is what I call an insight meditation practice. That is, what is yourself? We're supposed to bring well-being to ourself. What's ourself? Body, feelings, states of mind. So try and be more friendly to, say, the physical sensations, the unpleasant physical sensations. That's how you can experience it directly, not just may I be well, may others be well. Yes, ouch, my knee. Oh my goodness. Oh. May others be well. May others be well, and darn it, but not me. But I can't be well. So you need to bring it home to the direct experience of what you take to be yourself. And then you can begin to really sense it, what it really means. It's not just a good ideal or a way to even, get rid of anger and aversion. That's a result of it, but there's a different approach we're using now. When we have this, say, physical sensation, and it becomes unpleasant. And our normal reaction is ill will towards it, right? Ill will towards the pain. Yeah. Okay, you have to agree with me. But now we're trying to have goodwill towards the pain, and reverse engineer that whole process now. See? But to be able to do that, you have to give up your old self. My old self is programmed to react with ill will. Now, to be able to create goodwill now, you have to shift your whole perception. You have to change your whole concept of yourself. We built ourselves around developing ill will towards pain. All these years, until we understand the Buddha's teachings, we've been programming our mind and our being to react with ill will towards pain. And now the Buddha comes along and says, try and practice goodwill now to pain. Because, sit with me? Anybody think I'm crazy? You understand, yeah. But it requires a practice because it isn't actually logical. We still are still programmed to react with ill will or try and conquer, try and get rid of pain. Not be friendly with it, not to be open to it, receptive to it, are we?
To surrender?
Wow, you're very advanced.
I'm just asking a step.
Eventually.
Yeah.
See, it's a developmental process. So I'd say developing metta, the very first level is just non-contention.
Yeah.
Not fighting with the pain, for example. Not fighting the suffering. So how you can recognize that, I think the easiest way is in the physical body. Because if you look at the body when there's pain, it contracts. Now just try and relax now rather than follow the old contraction, just try and relax into the pain. Relax it, not contract with it. usually it's not so easy, but if your mind has enough concentration and enough mindfulness and maybe wisdom to recognize the usefulness of this, you can do that. And most people, they just contract and then they tolerate a bit more, then I got to get up and do walking meditation now. Then I go back in there for the next round. The next struggle, the next fight. But if you try and relax into it, and it's not easy either, because there's resistance to the relaxing, to the resistance to the contraction, and but if you can maybe breathing into it, learning to relax a bit more, with more concentration, you can begin to recognize there's a shift in the way we understand this whole process now. At least we don't compound it. By not contending with it, we don't compound that whole process anymore. And if you recognize that there is, a lot of possibilities of insight within that, maybe you could even be a little bit more welcoming. What is pain? Most of us have no idea. We just react to it. Yeah. And I would even say that depends on the situation and the person, but I would say sometimes up to 80 or 90% of the pain is your resistance to it.
Mental.
Yeah, and physical too. It's into our whole system. It's our trauma with pain. So as soon as you recognize pain, start to freak out. The red flags go up. Yeah. How much longer before the bell goes? Am I going to make it? Am I going to lose face and to my neighbor? They hear me move first and chicken. We've lots of stories we can come up with, I'm going to show them. So I have some results of that myself, because I have a really bad knee now, arthritic knee, from years of sitting on the concrete floor in Thailand. One of the, it was a bunch of, kind of macho men at Wat Nanachat, we're going to sit there through the mosquitoes and the heat and the starvation, and we're not going to move. Of course, most of the people were just nodding off. Couldn't keep it up. But I was pretty good.
What do you mean?
I was pretty good at beating myself up to impress people. So I sat there, through the pain and the pain and the pain, and I did think that, maybe if there was enough concentration, maybe I'd get some psychic powers and heal myself. But 10 years later, I was diagnosed having arthritis now in my knee. So maybe somebody helped somewhat. And as we know, feeling is in the mind, you see. So when your mind has more concentration, the concentration raises your level of consciousness. So if you're not very concentrated, you're kind of distracted. Any little bit of pain, irritation disturbs you, right? But if you're deep concentration, you can have quite a bit of pain, and you're in your high state of mind and concentration, and the pain goes to the background then. Sometimes it is you're just not paying attention to it. But your mind is focused on something else, the breathing and not the pain. But it doesn't last forever, so the trouble is eventually your concentration drops, or you get distracted, and then, oh my goodness, my poor knee. But pain can be very focusing too, because you can't get away from it. It's very, very obvious. It's much more stronger sensation than the breathing, say. So when I was first in Thailand, well, not first, but after the first year, I had a lot of sleepiness. Of the weather in Thailand, and not getting a lot of exercise either. Living in a monastery, not much exercise, and our diet, restricted diet. Anyway, so I again, being too clever for my own good, I thought of this very skillful technique that I would sit in a posture, half lotus, and the more sleepy I got, the longer I sat, the more sleepy I got. The longer I sat, the more pain I got too. So I could balance out the pain and the sleepiness, just keeping on the edge of it. Pain keep me awake, you see, for an hour or so, and then I had to pull out, and then and the pain was a lot more than the sleepiness. That did work for a while. And there is a one of the meditation masters in Thailand, Ajahn Mahabua, apparently used that practice, the pain meditation. I'm not recommending it. I don't recommend it, because it can be a bit dangerous. Because when there's pain, the body is under stress. So you got to be very, very wise to deal with your body skillfully. Otherwise, you're going to suffer for it, which I am right now. But anyway, if you develop this metta meditation this way, trying to be relaxed into it, trying to open to it, what happens is that you begin to recognize that your sense of a self, the self which has been built around the rejection or the ill will towards the pain, has to change. And when you change, the pain changes. And your kind of definition of pain, if you like, my definition, my ego definition of pain, for me, changes. And that changes, and I change. I have less fear of pain, for example. Before any kind of pain, I tried to get away from it. But when I could look at it and recognize, it's just, most of it's resistance or aversion or fear or something to it. Sometimes it is a contraction, physical contraction, mental contraction. When pain comes, then your whole world can shrink down around that pain. Poor me, oh no, what have I done? What's my karma? What's my bad karma to get this pain? And you just forget about the rest of the world, obsessed with pain. And it does have that effect, of course. We can't deny that. I'm not trying to deny it, but it depends on your attitude, how you can relate to it more skillfully. Instead of buying into the ill will circuit, an aversion circuit, try friendliness. Try to be more open to it, receptive. Yes, there is pain in life. Yeah. This was that's one of the lessons the Buddha was trying to wake people up to. There is pain in life. Most people are denying it. Old age, sickness, and death, keep hiding it away. Somebody gets sick, they whisk them off to a private hospital bed somewhere. Rush to get an operation. Hide it away. But it was, it's part of life. So being more open to it, receptive to it, you have a much more relaxed attitude. Yes, this is the way it is. Not denying it, not glossing it over with, oh yes, loving kindness, everything's wonderful. But having a different attitude to it. And if you can develop this enough, basically, it's a little bit a controversial point in Theravada, but in one of the scriptures, the Metta Sutta, the Metta Sutta, this is what should be done for those who are still, if you get down to the very end, those who are developed this, and a few other things, they will not be reborn again in this world.
Yes.
So in one sense, there's an indication in the scriptures that development of metta can lead to nibbana.
Yeah.
In the other commentaries of Visuddhimagga, it says no, only to the first jhana, because there still is conceptual thought. You see, you're still thinking of spreading love, loving kindness to, four directions and all this, but it can be developed to the degree of being boundless well-being. We're all living beings and everything. But if you follow this practice, then you're being friendly to this object of pain, say the knee, for example. So when you can do that, you shift, you change your attitude. The pain changes. The pain changes, you change. You can say that the object changes, then the subject changes. The subject changes, the object changes, to the point where there is the subject and the object disappear. There's nobody feeling any pain. You can say it's, unconditioned love or boundless openness of heart or something or other. So it has, positive developments. Though we still haven't got down to, it's not getting rid of pain. It's not getting rid of pain. There's still pain there, but it allows us to approach it. That's the main thing, I would say, rather than using metta as an antidote to ill will or aversion. Some people, they think that, oh yes, somebody hurt me, so I'll spread friendliness to them. Yeah. Sometimes you're trying to develop this meditation, it doesn't quite work. I would say with two reasons why it doesn't work. One is the wrong object, and the second one is the wrong application of it. The wrong object is, if somebody hurt you, don't spread loving kindness to them, spread loving kindness to your own hurt. They hurt you because you had something in you which got hurt. Yeah? Maybe they didn't even plan to hurt you, but you got hurt. That's your problem, huh? Yeah? But then people think, oh, it's their problem. They hurt me. They must be a bad person. Blah. No, look in here. Have metta, friendliness for your own anger, your own hurt. That's the right place to look. So the way of doing it is to keep it coming back to yourself again, not to look outside for sources of it. It's all based upon hurt. When you can develop it a bit more, you realize that when somebody's angry, what you don't hear is the anger anymore. You hear the pain. They're in pain. Then you recognize, oh, now that's where I have to look. When there's anger, bring it back home here. Where's the pain? What in me is hurting? Physical, mental, spiritual, whatever, emotional. You might find a source there then. And some of it will be, I would say there's a causal sequence there. A lot of causality there. We wake up maybe, or woken up by the anger because it's a very powerful energy, but behind it, there's a lot more other stuff there too. Just the ignorance and, the self. So if you can unpack it and go back to the source, that's where you're going to wise up about. You're holding on to yourself. That's why yourself gets hurt. If there's no self there, nobody gets hurt. Huh? Right? So one of the ways to reflect upon it too is the impermanence. When you begin to, with this contraction, I say, what happens is there's a pain there. Your body and mind contract around it and turn it into a thing. But if you can be more friendly and open to it, you see it more dynamically. How it kind of flows as the energy, it comes and it goes. And when your concentration increases, the pain falls away, fades away. Lose concentration, it comes back again. Things like this. When you think negative thoughts, in the Dhammapada, there's one scripture that says something like, when you think about they hurt me, they abused me, then you compound the anger. But if you think about, forgiveness and letting go, and then the hurt begins to diminish. We're not compounding it anymore. So I don't know if I got time for an example. I probably I've told this before. Haven't mentioned it for a while actually. The ski slope, ski track story. Oh, I forget about snow when I'm here,
You mentioned it before.
Huh?
One of the monastery that makes you...
Switzerland, yes, I was in Switzerland, yes, yeah. Anyway, better keep it short here, but anyway, the show about the causality processes of aversion, different levels of it. So one day in the Swiss Alps, and we had this wonderful snowfall. The next day the sun came out, picture postcard, Switzerland in the Alps. I thought, I have to get a picture for my postcard. Sent to my mother. So then the best place to get a photograph was to walk out in the front of the field in front of the monastery, which is a ski track in the wintertime, you see. But according to the the laws of Switzerland, you shouldn't walk on the ski track. It's for skiers, you see, not walkers. But I thought, well, I'll just take 10 minutes, you know. I know this, but it'll just take me 10 minutes. I'll go out there and take a photograph and be off before anybody comes. And the one time in my whole life in Switzerland, in 17 years, that I was walking the ski track and this guy come along and says, "Get off the ski track." One time in 17 years. And that was this time. And I felt guilty because I knew I was doing the wrongs. I thought, I'm just taking one photograph and be off in a minute. No, get off right now. You know? So I stepped off the ski track and had the snow up to my knees. I can't get out of this. I have to walk back on the ski track too, you know. Anyway, he kept going at me, you know. And he even skied away. And then I saw he was gone over the hill, so I started walking back and skiing. He came back over the hill and said, "Get off the ski." Anyway, okay, I got off the ski track. Middle of our winter retreat, 3-month winter retreat. Back to my hut, back to my room, and I sat there in a bit of anger. Who does this guy think he is anyway? I live here, you know. He's a day tripper. I live here, you know. But anyway, I just, you know, let it go, I guess. Next day, it's still there. This is disturbing my retreat. Not so peaceful anymore. Third day, still there. And, oh my goodness, so this is going to be a problem maybe. But as I recognized, so we're starting.
3 days after that.
3 days. The third day.
Okay, yeah. Still some sensation in my chest, irritation. I thought anger. I was angry with him. You see. So when I recognized that when something persists like that, there's more to it. There's a bigger story there. So I thought maybe I should have a look at this. And because it was actually an obvious sensation right in my chest, you know, kind of a pressure in my heart. So then I looked at that. I mean, I went through already many ideas, you know. Why do I think like this? What's the problem here? You know, I shouldn't be worried about this. But I went through all the rationalizations, but they didn't work. So back to the sensation. So I just was watching it, trying to be open to it, breathing into it, being friendly, relaxing with it. And then, I don't know, about 3 or 4 days, a week later, suddenly just shifted. And it wasn't anger at all. It was resentment. Aha! There's a big story there, too. It wasn't just being angry at that guy. It just triggered off whole resentment in my life. Resenting, you know, all kinds of people, situations, but there was still something there. I mean, it eased a bit and kind of became more dissipated, but there was still a sensation there. So it wasn't resolved yet. So I looked at that and be friendly to it and open to it and receptive to it and metta. And after another 5 days or so, that shifted too. It wasn't resentment, it was frustration. Oh my goodness, life frustrating. more and more diffuse, more and more you know, complexities, and more diffuse in my physically and in my life too. But it still was something there. Yeah. So again, I looked at that sensation, tried to open to it and receptive to it, and then that shifted too. And then it was fear. And you know, to me, fear is the basic emotion. That means the self is getting exposed, so it's going to throw up the fear distraction. And 2 kinds of fear. One was the fear of the anger, overwhelming anger, and the other one, I thought the fear was, you know, of losing myself. But I just looked at that again, open to it, and then that, after another week or so, that dissipated, and it was just clear energy flowing. Just what I call is life energy, just life energy flowing. I thought, oh wow, this is great. I want to keep this, and then the fear came back again. And I realized that's how the ego's built, you see. There is just life energy. And then you want to hold on to it, you know, grasp it with self. And of course, the fear comes up, the self, because if self is a phony, it's going to be frightened of losing. this energy and defending itself. Yeah. And then you hold on to that, and then there's frustration because life doesn't always work out the way you want it to be. Yeah. Then there's resentment that's picking on me particularly. You know. Then there's anger that somebody's picking on me. So anyway, just seeing that there's a whole causal sequence of situations there, and wherever we catch it with the anger, for example, if you follow it back, you can get right back to the self. That's where the source is, in yourself. Or you can say in the non-self, really. Or behind it is the non-self ultimately, but the self tries to make something out of it, and our result is anger. Yeah, at the far end of the spectrum then. So that's where we can wake up to maybe anger, ill will, aversion. If you follow it back, it's possible to follow it back right to no self, non-self, beyond the self. So there's hope there. So that's why I say these desire, sensual desire, ill will, and the other three hindrances I would say are delusion. These are kind of basic energetics or dynamics of the self. So you can follow them back. You can get understand a lot about yourself, how it's structured, how it's built up, and ultimately perhaps non-self behind it if you follow it back. So it's not a matter of just getting rid of these hindrances, but as I say, working with them to realize the transformation into wisdom, then become the wise self rather than the ignorant, hindered self. So hindered by ignorance and fettered by craving. So that's up to you, of course. That's your homework for the rest of your life. So, any questions so far?
In terms of like meditation practice, sometimes the metta thing might just come up at a time and something you can work with, for example. Even if you just you might be just, doing what you're doing, observing breath, for example, and then, things happen and you can sort of bring up that theme and take that on board, for example. Is that sort of how are you sort of putting it in incorporating it into your practice instead of it being this specific practice by itself?
Yeah.
It's more of an incorporating thing.
Yeah. I mean, if you know, there's 40 meditation themes in Theravada Buddhism. So when you're developing your practice, you start off with a simple, basic one, Anapanasati, and things come up, and then maybe sometime bringing in other themes can help you work with that.
Different tools.
Yeah, like in this case, if you're overwhelmed by aversion, ill will, just can't clear yourself out of it. It's totally overwhelming. Then you maybe have to bring in some tools, helpful tools. Call them skillful means. Bring in some metta bhavana, and perhaps that can, shift the whole dynamic of how you relate to it. Many times we have trouble with things because it's myself dealing with that thing. We think, me and this issue. But with friendliness, you can be more friendly, open, receptive, and it just shifts your perception then. It's like you have an issue with somebody, you just say, how about if we sit down and talk about it? And you have never thought of that. Well, I'm just going to continue with my way of avoiding you or spreading aversion to you, but we just shift the whole dynamic and then can clear the situation, clear a whole perception. So when you know some of these helpful tools, skillful means, the Buddha calls them upaya, then you can apply them when the situation arises. Other times, like you say, maybe you have to be familiar with it to apply it, though. Yeah. So sometimes, going through the different practices, trying them out, maybe some of them suit you more than others. But then you have, it's like going through the workshop and seeing what's available to use, you see, too. But some people, like I knew somebody who, they only knew about Anapanasati, just mindfulness of breathing, which they did for 10 years. Just every time they sat down. I said, that's only part of it, you know. Really? You got a good start, but that's only samatha. It's not insight yet, you know. And they just assumed. I mean, I assumed too when I first went to Thailand. All I have to do is sit in the cave and watch my breathing, and I'll be enlightened. You know, hopefully not too long in a cave, you know. But then while practicing mindfulness of breathing, then issues came up. You know, hindrances came up. Then I had to look into how to deal with them and what to do. You know, it's not a matter of just sitting there watching the breath, you know, with the empty mind or whatever. You know, when you're watching the breath, you increase your concentration. It changes your consciousness. Yeah, so things come up and issues arise physically, mentally, emotionally, and that's where it's helpful to have a teacher or be very familiar with some of the Buddha's teachings. You know, the various skillful means he gave to use. And I mean, I mentioned this example of, you know, pain in the body, for example, with metta. It's because physically, a physical sensation changes slower and it's a bit more obvious. But of course, if there is anger, there is mental states, painful mental states, also try and be more friendly to them. And friendliness initially is to be there to come closer to it. If you look at something or somebody as an enemy, you don't want to come close to them, do you? So you're left with your own perceptions of them. Yeah? But if you try and act with more friendliness, you get to know them. Yeah? Get to know them more directly, more clearly. Yeah? Like there was one situation, I don't know if I should, I guess I can mention it. That when I was in a monastery in Switzerland too, it just so happened that one time there was only two of us there, two monks, and we were totally opposite personalities. And we both recognized that but didn't know what to do. But the other monk said, he'd recognized us too, and he said, how about if we just sit down every week for an hour and just talk? We sit there face to face, and the first half hour, one of us talks to the other one just listens, just listen. Don't try to rationalize, don't try and explain, just listen. After half an hour, we change positions, you see. So we did that, and what a change. I just could not imagine his world. How I saw him was totally different than how he explained himself. Like I had a total different perception of each other. It was, wow, is that how he thinks? No wonder we couldn't communicate very well, because we had totally different perceptions of each other. And just sitting there listening to how he saw the world, it was really, really a bit of a surprise, but also really expansive. Oh, there are other ways to perceive the world than mine, We judge everything through our perceptions, you see. But then hearing his perceptions of things, I didn't necessarily agree with them, but recognize that his are just as valid as mine. It's like living in Thailand. I went there and I was talking about seeing ghosts all the time. I thought, oh God, they're all superstitious ghosts. Are you kidding? It's kid stuff. They're just. But then after a while, I realized, hey, they're talking about ghosts, and who am I to say they don't see ghosts? I don't see ghosts, but maybe they do. So I don't know if it's ghosts or not, but I don't see them. But if you say they're ghosts, it's up to you. At least I don't get scared by ghosts. I don't believe in them. But that's their perception. So who am I to say I'm right and they're wrong? You see?
But Ajahn, we have kata in Buddhism.
Yeah.
And they ghosts.
I don't know. Have you seen any recently?
Well, I don't see that.
Yes. So, yeah. But then at Wat Nanachat, Maybe I need to edit this too. Getting more ghost stories here.
Just don't go this way.
But at Wat Nanachat, some of the Western monks began to have strange experiences. Because Wat Nanachat's built on a cremation ground, where they used to cremate bodies and also bury bodies. There's a tradition in Thailand, if somebody dies very suddenly in a car crash or they're murdered or something, they shouldn't cremate the body. They should bury it because it'll be a disembodied spirit hovering around it. But if it dies very suddenly, don't even know you're dead. So it's very confused and looks around for what's happened. And then the first thing they do is go to usually the family, whatever is most familiar to them, and haunt the family. So they usually bury the body for about 3 years, and then they cremate it. So some of the Western monks began to have strange experiences there too. So it wasn't just a Thai thing.
Did you have one, Ajahn?
Not there, but somewhere else. I still don't know. I mean, it's one of these, it's hard to say what it is. It's a realm of the irrational or non-logical. So, for Thai people, they have this concept of ghosts, but I don't have it in my frame of reference. Except when I lived in England, there was the monastery in North England, in Harnham Monastery. There was a story, 15th century or something. Some lady was put under house arrest there and died there, Lady Babington. Because she wasn't a member of the local church, they wouldn't let her be buried in the church grounds, so they built a crypt for her in the hill there in the rock and put a body in there. So the story is she still wanders around the hill. I never seen her, I never heard anything about her, but some people say they have sensation, they have something about somebody walking around, So lots of stories in England about ghosts because it's an old country, But in Canada, not much. Just dinosaurs. You can't tell them apart from the bears anyway, so.
So question then, Buddha spoke about the hungry ghost and stuff. Well, how do you perceive that then?
Well, you can look at it psychologically too, I would say. Like the realm of hell, for example.
Okay.
Where's heaven and hell? I mean, some people take it physically. Heaven is up there, but I've flown in airplanes and I haven't gone in Sputniks or whatever. But I mean, I've gone up and where's heaven? I don't see any angels up there or anything. And I haven't gone down in the earth yet, but I went down in some caverns, but I didn't go deep enough. But
So what do you think Buddha spoke of when he spoke about the 31 realms?
well, I can't outthink the Buddha.
Huh?
I can't outthink the Buddha.
No, so what?
I mean, I think he had to use language and concepts which are familiar with people. So some people, maybe they heard that and they believed already there was, heaven and hell, and they saw, when there was a shooting star, it was a deva, flying by and stuff. They didn't have a scientific explanation for it, and maybe they see different kind of, have different kind of experiences, but they can't explain it.
Have you read the Divine Messengers Sutta? Sutta of the Divine Messengers?
Probably, yeah.
Which explains in very intricate detail what these realms, what people go through in those realms.
Yeah.
Is that then meant mentally how they go to?
I think it depends on how you want to perceive it. I mean, you perceive the so-called external world through your own mind. So what's prominent? This world here is interpretation of your mind, isn't it?
Yeah.
Perception in your mind. So is that really real, or if we had a detailed discussion of it, we have different disagreements about what color that book is over there.
Yeah.
But as long as we can communicate enough to not argue too much. So I tend to look at it more psychologically than so-called physically, so to speak, you know.
Mhm.
And that works for me good enough, you know. But for other people, maybe they have to, they say, objectify it more. I'm going up there, you know, with the birds, above the birds. I'm going down there, passing the worms.
So there's a animal realm which we can see, and he spoke of that.
Yeah.
I'm not arguing, I'm just trying to understand, could there be a physical aspect of it as well? Because
Yeah, I
because
mean,
the
it's
animals are also,
Yeah.
which is a realm we can actually see.
Yeah. Yeah, well, I mean, just from modern physics, for example, they're able now to have perceive more dimensions, as it were.
Yeah.
You know, so now they talk about having multiple dimensions right here, right now, but you're only tuned into one particular realm. You see.
At any given time.
Yeah, I mean, just like, for example, electromagnetic waves.
Yeah.
Our eyes can only pick up so many colors, you see.
Yeah.
You can't pick up infrared
Mhm.
or ultraviolet, you know. But some animals can pick up, or sound, for example, you know. Dogs can hear higher pitches than we can.
Yeah.
And we say, we see the world, we understand the world. Well, a dog understands more about sound than you do. You know? I mean, you know, so you're being terribly arrogant to say you understand the world, you know, when you got the limited ears and the eyes, there's these organs that just pick up certain energies or whatever, you know. But they're limited. So what else is there? What else can we know if we were to expand our minds? And then, you know, one of the you can maybe imagine the power of the Buddha in meditation. You know, where he was able to see different realms of existence and able to experience it, previous lives and things. You know, I can imagine. I appreciate it could be possible because when the mind's developed, there's many other possibilities there. So, what he meant, I don't know. It's hard to say. But he could have had a pretty mind-blowing experience in awakening. Then he well, I mean, that's why he said in the beginning, oh, people won't understand this. You know, it's like like when I was traveling, I went to many strange places in the world. You see, one of the strangest was Afghanistan. And one time I was traveling on this bus, and the sun was setting in the afternoon, you know, and I looked out the window of the bus, and it was just deserts and mountains, not a tree in sight. This is exactly the opposite of Vancouver. where there's mountains, but there's trees everywhere. It's so green, you know. And here it was in Afghanistan, not a tree in sight, just desert, you know. And it was kind of late in the afternoon, and this funny light, you know. And I thought, my God, am I on Mars or somewhere? Am I on the moon? This was so different than what I grew up with, you know. Then I just thought, how can I explain this to my friends in Vancouver? There's no way I can explain this. So when I went back, they asked me, well, how was it? I said, fine. How could I go into any detail? It was just totally mind-boggling, you know. And being on this bus, this rickety old bus with, like, even going into Afghanistan was like going back 300 years in time, you know. Camels walking down the streets and people in their traditional clothes, you know. Suddenly, it's a time machine, there's a time warp here. You know?
With the better as an insight meditation, there can be a subtle self-view in sending matter to the pain. So, something I've tried in the past and it's very successful is to understand pain as an expression of metta, so something that wishes to arise. And it's just trying to be happy. So it's your body just trying to be happy. And then you can understand that everything that arises is just trying to be happy in some way. And where it goes, but it might be in a little diluted way. So maybe the pain's being a bit too loud.
Mhm.
And then where it goes, watching it arise and pass, and noticing where it comes from, where it goes.
Mhm.
And it can be very helpful to recollect the Buddha as well, and how the Buddha would stand with such pain, rather than thinking of it as something affecting you and yourself.
Just rises from conditions and passes with conditions, and and if you're not standing in the way of it, nobody there, pain arises, passes away, nobody gets hurt. Something to look forward to. Work towards. So next week, I guess we continue with the hindrances. Next week, probably I just do lethargy and sleepiness. It's a big one too. I've been on the bigger ones as well. And then probably I can do, one day, do restlessness and doubt, maybe. Doubt's a big one too, but I'll see how far I go. Anyway, but next week probably just lethargy and sleepiness, or sloth and torpor. It's a heavy one. And hopefully it's not after one prana. Not after the observance day when you've been up all night. Then you want to have a personal experience of it.
Next week shouldn't be, Ajahn.
Yeah, right, that's what I mean, yeah. Shouldn't be next week. The observance day will be on a Wednesday, I think, next week. It usually shifts ahead one day.
But last week was Tuesday too.
Every
Last
say,
one time.
say, what is it? Something like 7 times in the year it shifts back one day, because to match up with the solar calendar. Yeah. So anyway, we just have to look on our calendar to find out what day it's what day it is. But it went back one day this fortnight or so, or a month or so. Yeah. But it happens only on the 3rd and 7th day of our Uposatha days of our month, of our season. So that's about 6 times a year, 6 or 7 times a year it happens like that. To try and keep the solar calendar and lunar calendar aligned somehow. So stay tuned. Okay, all the best.